so there was a really interesting segment where the senior advisor for this group called Target Smart, that compiles all voter registration data and just does like straight up data analytics. It is a Democratic aligned firm, but they're just looking at like data and hard numbers. They crunched the numbers about who is registering to vote after the Biden dropout, and it is pretty stunning. Massive surge for Democrats in general, but specific groups of typically Dem-aligned voters are just like registering to vote like nobody's business. Let's take a listen to a little bit of that.
We're tracking something really interesting going on right now. It's a surge in voter registration in key groups ahead of the November election. Among young black women, registration is up more than 175%. You heard that right, more than 175% in 13 states. That's compared to the same time in 2020. This, according to the data firm Target Smart. Registration has also increased among young Latinas and black Americans. 175%, can that possibly be right? You must have triple-checked this, or many more times than that.
You're right to repeat the number because I've more than triple-checked it. It's incredibly unusual to see changes in voter registration that are anywhere close to this. I mean, to remind people, 175% is almost tripling of registration rates among this specific group. You just don't see that sort of thing happen in elections normally.
So the same guy tweeted out the data they're seeing, and he said the Harris effect in the 13 states that have updated voter files since July 21st, that's when Biden dropped. We are seeing incredible surges in voter registration relative to the same time period in 2020, driven by women, voters of color, and young voters. So, you know, this data to me was maybe the most persuasive thing that I've seen, just because, look, the polls have been kind of, you know, they've been right in certain elections, but a lot of times they were understating Trump support. And then in 2022, they were overstating Republican support. And so when a race is close and the margin is within the margin of error, I am not sure what to make of like how to read into those things. But this is real human beings taking real action. And one of the things he points out, Kyle, is that new voters, like newly registered voters, are much more likely to vote. And the other thing to mention about this guy in this firm is that looking at the same type of data, they were one of the few outfits that was like, there's not going to be a red wave in 2022. We just don't see the data to back up the idea that this is going to be some massive Republican wave. We just aren't seeing that. And so that also gives them added credence because they called an election right when almost everybody else, myself included, were getting it wrong.
Can I say the thing?
Say the thing, babe.
I think Trump is cooked.
Wow.
I think Trump is cooked. The only thing I think that can get him back in the ball game, an economic crash, like a legit economic crash, and this one's tough. Yeah, because I think Netanyahu is planning this. I think this is going to be the October surprise.
Good point.
I do. I think this is what he's going to do. I think that Netanyahu is either going to do an all-out attack on Hezbollah in Lebanon in October, or I think he's going to do an all-out attack on Iran. And in that situation, Joe Biden's a fucking idiot and a cuck to Israel, so he'll go right along with it, and the U.S. troops will be engaged, and all of a sudden we're in a massive regional war again. And in that scenario, Joe Biden's going to be blamed. The Democrats are going to be blamed. But then the question is, will Kamala Harris have that stench on her?
Yeah.
And will voters blame her? And because he wants Trump to win, Netanyahu wants Trump to win, and he knows that this absolutely will hurt Democrats, it'll hurt Biden, and it might even hurt Kamala as well.
Yeah, because the one area where when you test different, like, you know, presidential traits, the one that Trump always beats her on is quote unquote strong leader. And so a war, something like that, also plays into like that sense of him as a quote unquote strong leader. But I have to tell you, this data actually convinced me that you're right, because you know, in some ways you can paint an elaborate, complicated picture. In other ways, when you look at the fundamentals, it's actually not that complicated. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are significantly more popular than Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. You know, if you look at their favorability ratings, significantly more popular. Her economic platform is significantly more popular than his is. She's young and he's old. And, you know, you have all of the... She gains all of the benefit of like people being able to envision her in office, but she has not been saddled with the like Biden bad vibes. So she's kind of in a perfect position. And then the other thing that was really persuasive to me is the one area where Trump has always outperformed and where Republicans typically outperform is on who do you trust on the economy. Kamala has closed that gap.
I have that in my notes right here. I was going to respond with that to what you were saying. No, she's winning on the economy.
In some polls, she's actually winning. And people in one poll said that she was more likely to do a better job with prices, which is, again, the key economic issue right now, than he is. So, back in 2020 when Sagar and I would have Trump representatives on our show, the thing they would always point to as the polls were dire, they're like, yeah, but look, people prefer Trump on the economy, and that's going to matter. And he still lost, but they were right that that was more significant than I expected it to be going down the stretch, and that's why it was extraordinarily close. If he's lost the edge on that, then I don't know what he's got to hang on to. So again, just to I'm starting to feel like the election's pretty simple. People just like her better than him. They're disgusted with the Trump era. Her policies are more popular than his. People like her more on the number one issue that, they're telling pollsters, and then you add abortion on top of that, and you see these voter registration surges, and, there's a lot that could happen between now and then, but it's looking damn good for her.
I haven't even hit you with the mic drop facts yet.
Okay.
So far you showed some pretty devastating facts that key Democratic demographics have skyrocketed in terms of registering to vote.
Yeah.
But there's other facts that I think really are mic drop moments. So one of the big ones is voter enthusiasm.
Yeah.
New numbers have just come out on that. 78% of Democrats are enthusiastic to vote in this election. That's the highest since 2008, which was Barack Obama's moment, which everybody looks at, all political scientists, all political experts look at and say, that was a really special moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
where the enthusiasm was through the freaking roof, and now we're at that level. By the way, what's the Republican number? 64%. So you have 78 to 64. That's a big deal. Another fact, which is super important, some polls just came out. In fact, it was a Fox News poll, and they have the Democratic Senate candidate, Gallego in Arizona, is up 15 points on Kari Lake. She is getting smoked. There is no scenario where Ruben Gallego wins by 15 points over Kari Lake and Kamala does not beat Trump in Arizona.
Yeah.
Right? Then we also have in Nevada. This is a place where Trump was up until very recently. Rosen, the Democrat, is up 14 points on her Republican opponent.
Wow.
You have Stein in North Carolina, up 11 points. I think his opponent, isn't it that Mark Robinson guy, that absolute psychopath? Yeah. So, I mean, guys, these numbers are, honestly, they spell bloodbath for the Republicans. And I still haven't even told you the most devastating fact.
Okay.
So you brought up Kamala's up on the economy.
Right.
Never in my lifetime, even under Obama, I don't think the Democrats beat the Republicans when it came to the issue of handling the economy.
Yeah.
Okay? The other thing is favorability numbers.
Yeah.
Kamala is way more liked than Donald Trump when it comes to favorability. And Tim Walz is just leagues above J.D. Vance, who, by the way, keeps plummeting day after day. And then the other thing is, this is the ace up the sleeve for Democrats. Guys, there are direct votes on abortion rights in the following states: Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Maryland, Missouri, Nevada, New York, South Dakota. So right there, Arizona all of a sudden, in my mind, goes lean Democrat. When you add that Ruben Gallego poll in there over Kari Lake, I don't want to go crazy here, but it's almost like beyond the lean Democrat, if you ask me. Florida might actually be competitive because of the reproductive right. That's crazy. Well, Florida, in my mind, 6 months ago, was a solidly Republican state, along with Ohio. That's the states where when we were kids, they were swing states. Now they're not swing states at all.
Yeah.
Now they're solidly Republican. There's some polls that have her 2 points down, 3 points down in Florida. Guys, I'm sorry, but if there's no economic crash and there's no gigantic war in the Middle East, this thing's done, bro.
Or other
this
black
thing is
swan,
done.
unanticipated black swan type event. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is there's a series of intangibles, like you mentioned J.D. Vance. And to me, this is the excitement on the Republican side around getting RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, to endorse your campaign is emblematic of this. They're just not running a good campaign. They don't know how to run against Kamala Harris.
Right.
They have, and the Harris campaign is doing a fantastic job. I feel like the Democrats finally figured out how to actually run against Donald Trump. And the weird dismissal is clearly making Trump and co. lose their minds. They don't know how to combat it. and adding RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, people who have really, you know, I mean, RFK Jr. just on the numbers. This is a person who is deeply unpopular, who is effectively toxic outside of Republicans.
Wait,
at
hold
this
on,
point.
hold on. You're being unfair because he beheaded a whale, and people love that.
Yeah.
Everybody loves when you behead a whale and strap them on the minivan and drive away, and whale juice is flying all over the highway.
This is the thing that's so crazy. Like, you're not beating the weird charges here, and so I know people did. People did a lot of like, oh, well, he was getting this much in this state, and some of that will go here and there and whatever. Okay, I understand that, and that's reasonable analysis to do, especially if you're a Nate Silver, et cetera. But you're forgetting about the fact that now the Trump campaign is saddled with this guy who has every week something weirder comes out about him. There's no he himself admits that there's like a million skeletons in the closet. There's no bottom to the weirdness of his own personal bio, let alone how fringe some of his views are. You know, it's not popular to be anti-vax. That is not actually a popular thing. It may be popular online. It is not. It's like wildly unpopular in the real world. And so now you've saddled your campaign with having to answer for this toxic individual who was at like 4% in the polls.
Listen, he's proven to me that he's a fair guy because he won't take sides on 9/11. And you're being unfair characterizing him like he's some crank. I mean, he wants to see both sides. So, like, you know, you got to be more, you're unfair to this guy.
And then
you're unfair to him.
Tulsi Gabbard, we looked it up together. She got 0.7% of the vote in the Democratic primary. And remember they teased after RFK Jr. joined the Trump campaign, they were like, oh, other Democrats are going to join. And I was like, they can't mean Tulsi. She's not a Democrat anymore.
I knew they meant Tulsi.
But they meant Tulsi.
I knew they meant Tulsi.
And, you know, at this point, like I said, she got 0.7% of the vote in the Democratic primary. And that was when she was saying things that were actually, you know,
Democratic.
Her only fan base are people who are already supporting Donald Trump.
The weirdest online people you've ever met in your life are her only fans.
So,
and the online is not the real world. I'm sorry. It is just fucking not.
It's just emblematic to me of like, you all are, they think this is a real strategy. They think that they do. They genuinely think this is a real strategy to win. And so that tells me like, you're clueless. You've totally lost touch with any normal, like not online brained human being.
I saw this RFK clip where he was talking about Ozempic, and like there was some plan to hand out free Ozempic. It's not going to happen. But he goes, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be doing.
Why aren't you doing the voice?
What?
The RFK voice.
Oh, we should. I can't do it. We shouldn't be doing that. Anytime somebody tells me to do on command, all of a sudden I forget how to do an accent, and everything eventually becomes like Scottish or Indian. We shouldn't be doing the Ozempic thing. We should be having government 3 meals a day, organic 3 meals a day that the government provides. And I saw him say this, and I'm like, the Republicans are against what Tim Walz just did in Minnesota, right. Free school breakfast and free school lunch for kids, and you think they're going to wake up tomorrow and be like, let's do 3 free meals a day and make it organic. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Go line up for your government issued organic provisions instead of Ozempic.
It's just like his bullshit about how Democrats are the pro-war party and Democrats are the pro-censorship party. Cue the list of 78 neocon warmonger things Trump did and 78 pro-censorship things. He sued Bill Maher over a joke. Who does that?
The one that really actually has been irritating me is he and especially his, like Nicole Shanahan, his vice president, they talk about like, oh, toxic chemicals and these, you know, their whole thing is, oh, these climate change people, they forgot about toxins in the environment. All they care about is carbon now, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you pointed this out. Tim Walz got rid of Forever Chemicals.
Tim Walz banned the PFAS. He banned them. And Nicole Shanahan just was talking about we need to ban the PFAS. That's why we're with Trump. And it's like, what is wrong with you?
And Trump, when he was in office, he like let loose on the regulations so that they could poison the waterways. I mean, who believes that Trump is the person to not poison our children and not just say let her rip when it comes to putting out toxins into the environment? It's just insane.
So there was just a listeria outbreak, and people went back and checked. In 2019, Trump privatized the regulatory mechanism to deal with deli meats. So he basically turned over the regulation of that industry to that industry.
Oh, this is the boar's head thing, right?
And now there's a listeria outbreak.
Oh my God.
Like, and this is, okay, remember guys, RFK for the longest time, he said his biggest issue was he wants to beef up the regulatory state, beef up the EPA to go after the polluters, you know? And now you're siding with the guy who literally rolled back clean water protections.
Yeah, that's right. Dave Weigel tweeted this out. He says, my favorite factoid is that Trump weakened regulation of atrazine, the chemical that Alex Jones says makes the friggin' frogs gay, and Biden cracked down.
No, I hate it, Crystal.
And Project 2025 would make it easier for big corporations to dump dangerous toxins and poison. It's like, they just make shit up. They just make shit up.
Because here's the thing, Crystal. It's all vibes to them.
That's it.
Everything is vibes, right? And there's this weird thing that happens where, and I told you this before the show, I have a new term for Trump. I call him a revolutionary conservative. And what I mean by that is he has the same fucking agenda as Dick Cheney and George W. Bush. Super conservative across the board. But he pairs that with a way of speaking that's unfiltered. And he yells at the media, the mainstream media. And he calls people corrupt even though he's corrupt. So there's this aura of, oh man, he's angry and I'm angry and he's taking on people I don't like. So therefore, they impart on him this notion that he's a populist, that he's anti-war. He feels revolutionary, even though he's the most pro-status quo, pro-big business candidate and president of all fucking time.
Yeah.
And it's just, I can't, like, all these people who just go based off vibes, I fucking despise it. I fucking despise it. But let me bring up one more point here to get back to the election thing.
Yeah.
So in 2022, to your point, so many people were predicting a red wave. I was one of the few who was agnostic. I can't say that I was with Michael Moore and with these guys who got it right. I wasn't. I was like, I just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that was way better than what
way better than most people. Yeah, for sure. And 51% of the Republicans who were running at the time were election deniers. 51%. So mix that with the abortion extremism, which again, those were the two big things that were an albatross around their neck. And the general feeling from the American public was these people are extremists, right? That's still there.
Yeah.
And that's their big problem. And then finally, you're right about 2016 and 2020. Trump overperformed the polls.
Yeah.
There was some semblance of like a secret Trump vote that, wouldn't tell pollsters or wasn't registered in the polls, and then they would go out and vote for him in 2016 and 2020. What we saw in 2022 was actually the exact opposite, that there was a secret Democratic vote. You know, all of these special elections as well that have happened since then, secret Democratic vote. And the most recent example that we have to point to is the Republican primary. And even after Nikki Haley dropped out, people were still voting for her, and Trump was underperforming his poll numbers by 8 points.
That's a good point.
And again, I still think that applies, where if anything, you're looking at a situation where the polls are just correct, or if anything, there's a secret Democratic vote, and the numbers you showed with the new registration, that is a really good indicator of what we have to look forward to.
Well, and to add on to that, number one, I mentioned before that new voters more likely to actually vote than people who've been registered for a while.
Of course.
Number two, they won't be captured in polls.
Yep.
Because once pollsters start to do their likely voter screen, one of the things is like, oh, you didn't vote last election, you're not going to vote this election. So people are very unlikely to be captured in a likely voter screen. The other thing, to add to your point, is it's not just the midterms. All these special elections and ballot initiatives that we have seen since then, Democrats have more, I can't say 100% of the time, but many more times than the opposite have outperformed the polls. So it's not crazy at all to think at this point that that could genuinely be the case. And when you see numbers like that, those voter registration numbers, that is highly indicative. Again, that to me, that data, because it's not reliant on a likely voter screen and pollsters making judgment calls about who is doing what, where, when, and who they can get on the phone, whatever. This is real human beings engaged in real activity in the real world. And so that was the thing that really persuaded me, because I've been much more circumspect up to now. That was the thing that really persuaded me, like, no, I'm not great. The fundamentals are real. She is in position to win. And, the Trump campaign is really flailing at this point.
Can liberals and leftists put aside their differences and get together in a coalition to beat Donald Trump? That's what we discussed with the head of Project Liberal. His name is Josh Eagle. We had a great podcast. We got into a lot of serious, substantive stuff. So everybody do yourself a favor, sign up on Substack for Crystal, Kyle, and friends below.